if you don't use it, well, I'm sure you already finished that statement for me. You've heard it so many times. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. We say that about many things. We say that about, I know one of the things we talk about is language. If you've learned a new language and you don't get a chance to use it, well, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. Certain skills associated with it, you don't use it, you'll lose it. Well, I've heard that said many times, and it's a very simple concept. And many people nod their head when you talk about that phenomenon happening, except for one. And it's not very significant. It just happens to be killing us. Continuing our series today on is it age or is it inactivity today on the Personalized Fitness Podcast. Good day and welcome to the Personalized Fitness Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Garrett Williamson. I'm president of Personalized Fitness and the host of the Personalized Fitness Podcast. Before we dive headfirst into yet another part of our series of is it age or is it something else, of course, today we're covering inactivity. I want to tell you how to get in touch with the show. And that is if you want to give us a call, if you got any questions, you got any questions for Katie, you got any questions about this podcast or any other, or if I've possibly offended you because of what I've said, you can give me a call at 251-278-3343. That's 251-278-EDGE. You can also reach out to me at Garrett, Garrett, at personalizedfitness.com. That is also our website and our Facebook page. Hit me up on Twitter at TeamPE if you have any other questions. Listen, I think I told y'all recently I started this new series called Is It Age or Is It? And it's all based on the what you've heard me talk about several times before, and the ridiculous that is the idea that the ridiculous fact that time passing on a calendar causes deterioration. It's never been proven. There's not a single study out there that proves it. If anybody tells you that time passing on a calendar automatically causes deterioration, they are lying to you. Anybody telling you that time passing on a calendar causes deterioration is a liar, and Garrett Williamson called them a liar. And if you're telling people that, I am telling you that you are lying to them. There's not one clinical study that backs up what you believe. Instead, there are 4 different concepts of determining ability, and all 4 of those concepts are 100% controllable. They're 100% your responsibility, 100% your fault. And I said in this series, I was going to try to attack everybody's what I call their but what about? Because I've noticed that when I've given my talk on Live Age, I've run into I've given thousands of examples across the years of everything I'm talking about, every part of the 4 aspects that control ability. I've given examples for each one of them, tons of examples for each one of them. But I'll invariably have somebody raise their hand and say, "Yeah, but what about?" And what they're talking about is they're talking about the example that's in their head. They happen to have a rotator cuff problem that just turned up in the last few years, and they think it's age that causes that, and they've realized that they have had friends that have had that same problem, so therefore they think it's age, and they want to know, but what about this? And the interesting answer to it is that if you look at any of the other examples I've given and use pretty much the same concepts and same rules, you're going to get the same answer for that. But I've decided to take on this podcast and this series to try to attack all the but what abouts out there. And as I said in my last podcast, the first of the series, it'll probably take forever. But that's all right. We'll give it a shot. Today, we are attacking the idea of, is it age or is it inactivity? Now, I started the podcast off talking about that real easy concept that we are all familiar with. In fact, I said it in the intro. I said, if you don't use it, well, the answer, of course, is you lose it. But you already said that in your head, I'm sure. Every time you hear, if you don't use it, the first thing you think of is lose it. When I've done that talk. For the last 14 years, I've spoken to 8 people. I've spoken to 300. Every time I give that talk, I say that phrase when I'm talking about inactivity, and everybody answers, "You'll lose it." Everybody understands that concept, and I related it to. I used an example in the intro talking about language. I happen to have studied Spanish. I think it's a beautiful language. I knew living on the Gulf Coast, I'd get an opportunity to use it. I have gotten an opportunity to use it quite often. I've used it in my travels. I raced in Pontevedra, Spain. Actually used it there, of course. I've used it on cruise ships. I've used it throughout the Caribbean and diving, and I love it. I think it's fantastic. After I finished my last semester of studying Spanish in college, I had the fantastic fortune of going to spend a month in Guatemala City, Guatemala. They were opening up a gym there, and they were looking for some children's programs. And of course, I worked with kids for years and was going to help them develop some children's programs for this gym. So I spent a month down there, and the whole time I was down there, I spent it with the soon-to-be manager of this facility, and he spoke English about as well as I spoke Spanish, and so he communicated to me in English. I communicated to him in Spanish. And that month, really, at the end of it, I was thinking in Spanish. I mean, I could really, I could fluently communicate. I won't say I was fluent in Spanish, but I could fluently communicate. I could leave my hotel, and I was not worried about having trouble communicating with people. Go shopping by myself. I was actually in a triathlon while I was down there, and communicated with the riders when I was trying to get a bottle of water passed across 8 people. So I was using that language. Therefore, it was fantastic. That was 1991. Here we are in 2023, and I have to spend a week or so somewhere on vacation before the end of the week. I'm finally able to communicate. Why? Of course, I'm not using the language. I'm not using it on a regular basis. Therefore, I lose it. That's no surprise. If I tell that to anybody, not even a language professor, everybody understands that. But when it comes to our bodies, when it comes to deterioration that we see, we rarely do we think of that concept. We may think of it at younger ages. That's why we start working out, start doing regular exercise routines and working out, and really planned workouts that aren't associated with sport. Somewhere in our maybe 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, somewhere up there is when we start doing these planned sessions, because we've heard that we've got to try to fight aging. I love that. I think that's interesting. We've created an enemy that is even there, and we're going to fight them. That's fantastic. And boy, have we spent a lot of money on it. I'm not sure what the original budget was, but we spent a lot of money on fighting this invisible foe. But we start doing those things, and what we really never fully accept. We accept in many ways that we can get better because we've gone so far downhill that we think we might be able to climb back up just a few steps. And we believe that we're going to constantly get worse. But the truth of the matter is, it's inactivity that got us where we are. And unless you've had some permanent damage, it's activity that's going to get you right back to where you were. And when I say where you were, there is more science-based evidence. There are more studies out there that prove that I can take, some of you younger listeners might not know who I'm talking about, but Carl Lewis, Google him if you don't know who he is. Incredible world-class spinner, Olympic gold medalist. At one point in time, I think he held the record for the most gold medals in Olympic. I think he held the total medal count for the longest time. He was out of California. Is just an incredible sprinter. There is more science, and I'm in my 50s. He's got to be in his 60s. There's more science that proves, doesn't theorize, proves that unless Carl Lewis has got some kind of permanent damage, in other words, he's missing an entire knee. His knee's not there, or something like that. There's more science that proves that I could take him right now at whatever number he's got on the calendar, and I could make him as fast, if not faster, than he ever was. There's more science that proves that than proves that I can't. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I say all the time that there's not one clinical study that proves that time passing on a calendar causes deterioration. I'm saying that again. I hope every person that thinks I'm wrong about that hears this and rings my phone off the hook, comes and sees me personally. Love to see the study because not a single one exists. But as I've said, several of them exist that prove what I'm talking about. Well, let's pick one. Okay, let's pick what I call, and I don't know if it's actually termed this, but it's called, I refer to it as the Dr. Kenneth Cooper, the Cooper Research Facilities study on nursing home study. And in this study, there were several hundred people involved in this study, and they did basic exercises with these individuals, 6 basic exercises, as a matter of fact. And some of them you can do sitting in a chair. I mean, they were very basic. They did 6 simple exercises, and every 2 weeks they modify those exercises. So what I mean by modification, it's like we do when we're training somebody. If it's too hard, in other words, we're making us go backwards or whatever, it's too hard, they made it easier. If it was too easy, they made it harder. Pretty simple. Rule of thumb. We're going to break down muscle tissue, you got to push it a little farther. If you're breaking down too much, causing damage, you're going to back off of it. And that's what they did. They did that every 2 weeks with these individuals with just these 6 exercises. The study went on for 6 months. At the end of the study, the participants saw, on average, a 50% muscle gain. 50% muscle gain. And I always like to say this when I'm giving this on a speaking engagement. I always tell everybody, hey, if you'd like to have 50% muscle gain, please raise your hand. And if you don't raise your hand, I will gladly take yours. I would take a 450% muscle gain. No problem with that whatsoever. That would be awesome. Because muscle is a positive tissue. It doesn't matter how much gravitational pull of the earth is affecting your body. In other words, what people call weight. Doesn't matter. Having more muscle, almost always a good thing. The average age of these participants was 70 years old. Now, there's several things shocking about this study. First thing, if you think about it, that's pretty amazing. 6 simple exercises, 6 months worth of training. 50% muscle gain, average age 70 years old. You may not be amazed by that. That's the second amazing thing about this study is you may not be amazed by it. When I started telling and using this example over 15 years ago, I started using this example. People were amazed. Now they're not amazed. Why? Because life expectancy has increased and 70 has become not old anymore. I don't think that ever rings a bell with anybody. Wait a second. Maybe there's truth to we can actually get better. We can actually get stronger. But the other thing that's amazing about this study is that study is probably 30 years old now. Another amazing thing about it, Dr. Cooper replicated that same study with people all the way up. He did it with 80-year-olds. He did it with 90-year-olds. And then in 1996, the last time I heard about this, he was doing it with people in their hundreds, and he was getting the exact same results. What did he do? Simple. He increased their activity. They had chosen, through their lifestyle change, through their interests, whatever, they had decreased their activity. And he turned everything around for them by just increasing their activity. So we think of, I'll give you another example. Is it age or is it inactivity? You've got a situation where you've got an individual that can do a standing backflip. That sounds pretty cool. I know that I like it. It's something I did gymnastics for years. I think it's wonderful. If this individual does it every single day, in fact, was encouraged to do it every single day, well, if they keep doing it every single day, they're pretty well going to be able to maintain that activity. If they stop for 6-8 months or whatever, they won't be able to do that activity anymore. This is no different. This is no different than somebody that stops doing any kind of activity like if they're walking on a regular basis, doing strength training on a regular basis, then all of a sudden, after decreasing this activity, stopping this activity, all of a sudden their knee goes out. They have a knee problem. They're having trouble standing up now because of that. Well, those things usually happen later in life. And we attribute it to time passing on a calendar causing it. Obviously, that's not what's causing it. Obviously. It seems so incredibly simple to me because I can see the natural pattern of inactivity equaling disability. The other thing that I see is I see the excuses that people build around themselves. Now, what I mean by that is nobody wants to realize that they have lost ability. Now, we look at that another way. You've probably never thought about that concept. Nobody likes to realize that they have lost ability. But I'll show you one that you are familiar with, and that is nobody likes to admit that they're old. Now, think about that. It's the same thing. If you can possibly think about time passing on a calendar, becoming older, pick a number. I'm not sure what old means to you. I'm 55 now, so that doesn't seem old to me. I guess 80 would seem old to me. Okay, pick that number. What if I had the same abilities at 80 that I had at 18? Would I feel, quote unquote, old? It's really hard for people to separate that sometimes. But nobody wants to feel, quote unquote, old. So what they're saying is they don't want to feel unable. They don't want to admit they're unable. And the last thing that we want to admit is that we caused the inability. And so when we're around a large group of people or around all our friends and we're talking to them, oh, my knee went out, whatever. Yeah, well, mine went out too, and so did Aunt Sarah's, and my granddaddy's did too. Oh, whew, I thought it was my fault. Evidently, it's time that causes it. And that is such a powerful tool and such a powerful excuse and such a powerful defense mechanism that we have. We'll tell it to people. We'll believe in it. We will not let go of it. We don't need any science to back it up. And we'll argue it till the day's done. And I run into that quite often. The wait till you get to be this number, you'll see what I mean. But actually, we've done it to ourselves, and one of the ways we've done it is through inactivity. I would much rather, and you'll hear this as we go through the series, you'll hear this over and over again. I would much rather have responsibility for my success. If I own it 100%, I would much rather have that because then I'm in control of it. If I want to go downhill, that's fine. Glad to go downhill if I want to, if I really want to. But if I don't want to, I want control of it. And too many times we get comfortable with that excuse because we don't want the responsibility that we actually made it happen. Folks, if time actually caused these things, then somebody would be able to give you the exact date it's going to happen to everybody, and there should be no ifs, ands, or buts. And know what I mean by the ifs, ands, or buts? So, well, it happens to everybody, but they can't say it happens at the same time because it depends on, and you watch. What it depends on deals with fitness, nutrition, lifestyle, mindset. It deals with one of those four things. And if it deals with one of those four things, it is 100% controllable. Remember what I said at the very beginning, I don't want anybody to forget this, and that is that the ridiculous concept that time passing on a calendar causes deterioration is a lie. If you are believing that, you are lying to yourself. If you're saying that to somebody, if somebody says it, saying it to you, they are lying to you. If you are saying that or you know somebody is saying that, you or that person is a liar. Don't believe those lies. You can change your life. You can actually be in full control of how you decide to grow, decide to have time pass on a calendar for you. You're in control of all those abilities. So if you need help with that, hey, reach out to me at area code 251-278-3343. That's 251-278-EDGE. You can also reach out to me at Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com, which is our website, our Facebook page, and hit me up on Twitter at Team PE. I know that I seem very angry when I say these things because I do think it's absurd. I do think it's absurd that we believe that time passing on a calendar causes deterioration. When today, I've at least proved to you that inability is caused by, one way it's caused by, inactivity. And that's, reversing that is one way. one more way we can help you reach your level of wellness. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope I have you join me next time.